The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are going to do a parent-to-parent talk a little bit later on in the show about reducing your anxiety about your child's future. And I want you to know we had planned this a couple of days ago, but we're going to start, this show should be entitled Shannon Pops Off, because I'm gonna. And I want to give the disclaimer that I'm probably going to raise my blood pressure and all of your blood pressure, which is we're going to need this later on. But a lot happened yesterday. And you know, if you've been watching the show this year, that I made a promise to all of you in January that we were going to be as positive as we could and, you know, take things as they come and not deal in fear and fear-mongering, but that I said very particularly, because a lot of you were writing in over the holidays with grave fears about the Department of Education and what that was going to mean to your children. And I made a promise to you that when things happened, I would let you know. If you watched on Monday, I said I missed it somehow in the crawl that a bill had been proposed in the House of Representatives that had 32 sponsors, representatives sponsoring it, calling for the end of the Department of Education. I asked you to call your representatives. Well, then the poo hit the fan yesterday afternoon, and it is critical that people take action today, because stuff is happening today. Let me run down for you if you missed all of the news. Yesterday, they announced that they were laying off and firing 50% of the workforce of the Department of Education. Now, that's not good, right? But I don't think there's a person among us that believes that there's no redundancies or that they couldn't make some cuts and be more efficient, right? And so we're all being told to just, you know, accept that this is what's happening and that they've mindfully cherry-picked the people who are a bureaucratic bloat, is what Linda McMahon said. 50%, okay? That seems a lot to me, but my friends, we got to watch the ball, and there's more happening than just that. Couple of things I want to make you aware of. First of all, Linda McMahon, who is now the head of the Department of Education, I believe in giving everybody a chance, right? Well, she's already failed. She's already had her chance, and she's already failed, and I'm going to tell you why in 1 second. But before I say that, I want to say that, you know, for any of you who are watching, are like, oh, this is just a political thing. I want to make you aware. Please go back and watch 13 years ago when I popped off on Kathleen Sebelius, who was at the time a Democrat appointed by Obama, who was the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And I popped off on her on a regular basis, and we had a joke in my family that, you know, her name was Kathleen Sebelius, and that if I ever meet her, she's going to hear it from me, right? It is not just about which party affiliate you're with. If you come for our kids, I'm coming for you. And Linda McMahon, I'm coming for you right now. Because last night, she was on Fox News with Linda Ingram, and she was talking about how we didn't all need to worry because she had cherry-picked the people that were not going to affect programs like grants and IDEA. She is the one who said IDEA. And then Linda Graham said to her, what does that stand for? And the 76-year-old Linda McMahon said, well, do you know what? I'm not sure I can exactly tell you what it stands for, except it's the programs for disabled and needs. That's what the sentence was. I don't know what IDEA stands for, but except it's programs for disabled and needs. She did not even put a person in there for disabled children or students with special needs. She just said disabled and needs. Then Ingram, clearly flustered, said, well, I've been I don't even know, it's probably Individuals with Disabilities Act. Linda, great guess, except you left out the E, which stands for education, which is one of the most important words in the title. And it's also what the person you're interviewing is the head of. And then is it, like, as if it couldn't get worse, Linda McMahon said, well, you have to understand, this is my 5th day on the job. I'm really trying to learn all these terms very quickly. Okay, your 5th day on the job, that's your excuse for not knowing this? Everyone who's watching this, if you are an individual on the spectrum or you are the parent of an individual on the spectrum, what she just told you was, this is not my priority. I've had 5 days, and in those 5 days, and she says, this is not my idea, cutting all these people, that she got this from, that she was ordered to do this. It was not her idea. She firmly puts it all on the president's back. But in those 5 days, you did not prioritize knowing what it was that helps our children, who are not just known as disabled and needs. Thank you very much. And this whole 5-day excuse thing, excuse me. I knew, like Thanksgiving time, that you were the person being tapped for this. Are you telling me that you only started cramming for this test when you were being paid? Linda, no. And are you telling me that in your job, with wrestling, that if you had a match coming up in 5 days that you didn't bother to know the names of the wrestlers? Linda, I don't know how stupid you are, but don't take us for stupid, right? It wasn't your priority. You chose not to make it your priority, and we need to listen to that and act accordingly. But my friends, this is not the worst thing. If you read about what happened when they told the officials that they were being laid off, I want you to hear exactly what they said. They said, first of all, the senior officials told reporters that the cuts will not impact federal student aid in any way, shape, or form, as experts raise alarm about whether the agency can carry out its usual duties with such a massive reduction. If you don't even know what it is that you're supposedly protecting, you want us to believe that, and by the way, she says this is just the beginning, that she has already been given a mandate to cut the entire thing. How is that going to protect IDEA? And you don't know what it stands for. But get this, the officials added that an earlier memo sent to employees announcing that the agencies will be temporarily closed for unspecified security reasons was due to the layoffs. The earlier memo obtained by CNN instructed employees to work remotely until Thursday. They went into the Department of Education places, they told people that they had 5 minutes and that they needed to leave and they needed to work at home. Everyone, the people who were laid off were told they could work at home for 2 days, then their layoffs start on the 21st. But they're never coming back. Everyone else, they told, you're going home and you're gonna work from home until Thursday, and those buildings are locked as of last night until tomorrow. When asked why, they said it was security reasons. Now, I can't absolutely know, but we just went through the DOJ, going into all of these different locations and hacking the computers and taking all the data. And employees put up a fuss, right? So now the Department of Education is locked and we don't know what's going on in those buildings for the next 2 days. My friends. If you are not, I am not overly worried about my own data because, what are you gonna do to me? Take my data. But our children's data, everyone needs to scream now. You need to call your representatives. There is information about your children at the Department of Education that you do not want these people to have. That your child is special needs, what your child's vaccination records are. if your child is identifying as being non-binary, do not allow for these people to have access to your child's records. This is a critical moment in time. I am begging you, please, even if your child is no longer in school, your child's records are still housed there. We do not want that information to be stolen from our children. I am begging you, call your representatives. There's a great new app that I just downloaded as the show was starting called 5 Calls. It's an app that helps you to be able to identify who your representatives are, and I am begging you, call them today. Tell them, I don't support this. I want to know what's happening. I can tell you that they keep track. They keep little hash marks. You're going to feel like, what did it really matter? But it does matter, because they'll say how many people squawked. And that information, we've already seen this administration takes heat on that, right? We saw tariffs slow down. We saw, Social Security, things slow down when they see, they're ticking us off. Now is the moment. We keep wondering, like, when do we stand up? When do we say something? It's going to be too late if you wait till next week. You got to say something today. For your kid, for everybody's kid, make those calls today. And then if you have more time, send emails and share it with everybody you know. And if your child, you're homeschooling and you're like, I've already figured it out, that's great. Your child still has files at the Department of Education that have very critical private information that you do not want some entity, these 23-year-old young men who are expert hackers who are not legally bound to, keep that information safe. Do something today and let them know this is not okay. They have not outlined a plan for us of how our children's IEPs will be upheld while they do away with 50%. She doesn't even know what IDEA is. Let's not be mistaken. She's not on your children's side. She didn't even refer to them as people. Oh, okay. Now we've all raised our blood pressure. So I said to you earlier in the week that I'm making shows based on what people call me and say. And I had a phone call on Monday that absolutely ripped me to the core of my being, where a parent was talking about how much anxiety they're feeling about their child's future right now, and how they're finding it hard to sleep and how stressful it is. And it's not the only phone call that I've had this way. But in this phone call, the parent brought up something to me that really set me back. They said, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about that, I'm concerned about all of this stuff. But she said, Shannon, have you been hearing from other parents? Because I belong to a group and here is what our concern is. Because in the address to the Joint Congress the other day, the statement was made about that there are only 2 genders. And we saw yesterday that on the floor of the House, there was some very controversial behavior where I don't want to get into all that, but they're making a stand saying we're not allowing for there to be any, it's all binary, right? 2 genders, that's it. And a lot of our kids statistically don't fit into that category. And this parent said to me, there's a group of us that are concerned that our children are going to be rounded up, taken to a camp, and ostensibly, the worst thing could happen at that camp. The word she used was euthanized. And I said to that parent, that's not happening. I understand why you're afraid of that, because some very incendiary things are being said, and we want to protect our children. But, we know that happened, although people have been denying the Holocaust recently too. It happened, and people were put to death. I understand what the concern is, but I said to her, that's not happening, not in this day and age, not with the internet, we have a community of people that will never allow that to happen. And then, it's being alleged that the current person who holds the office of president posted an upside down pink triangle with a Buster sign through it yesterday. I can't confirm that. But we live in horrible times, right? But because of that conversation and other conversations that I had the last couple of days with parents, we decided to do a thing about how to reduce your anxiety about your child's future. I know I just raised it, but let's see if we can't help ourselves today, because us being stressed is not the ticket. Sometimes it's us taking action, right? And what the action is depends on what your anxiety is. So I didn't say, but we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Please like, share, tell other people about what we're doing here. You know, we have a very robust, two robust YouTube channels, Autism Live and Ask Dr. Doreen. Please check those out. We are starting our 15th year of doing this, so you can go back and watch all the things that I have said in the past and see I try to be fair, but you come for our kids. I'm going to squawk. And they're coming for our kids, friends. We all need to wake up. They do not have our kids' best interests at heart. And you know I don't say that lightly, but that's what I'm seeing. Okay, also, we love it when you guys write in. I'm saying hi to Rodney and hi to Anna. She says, yes, stress levels seem extremely high. Hi, Rosie. So thrilled that you're here. Yeah, it's a stressful time. But, you know, the history books are going to say what we did in response to that stress. We have to take care of ourselves, put our oxygen masks on, but we also have to take action. We have to speak up for our kiddos. If you watched on the floor of the house yesterday, somebody stood up for somebody and said, excuse me, that's not right. Amazing. We got to stand up. We got to stand up and speak on behalf of our kiddos and speak with them and rally with them and be good allies and accomplices. Okay. I also want to say that I know that most of you are listening in podcast, and that's a wonderful thing, and we appreciate you. When you download, we're available everywhere you get your podcasts, and when you download it, you get advertisements. That's how we make it free for you. If that's not your thing, you can pay a $5 subscription fee to get everything that we do, and you get it ad-free. So if you want that, you go to glow.fm/autismlive. $5 a month, and you get it all in your inbox. Let me tell you something. If you're afraid you're going to miss some of our shows in April, I would definitely sign up for it, because you're going to get all of them. And some of them are going to be in Spanish. I'm so thrilled, and we appreciate our fabulous Chris Desmond so much for making that happen. Okay, let's launch in, though, because I don't know about you, I need to lower my blood pressure right now. So let's talk about how we can do this. So let's go on to our first slide here. And I don't know, should we go through them fast and go back? Chris says it's up to me. All right, let's go through them fast, and then we're going to go back and talk about them. But number one thing is you got to identify what the fear is. You got to say what it is. Let's go on. We'll talk about what fear is. Go ahead, go on. We're going to talk about putting your fear on trial. Then number two is ground yourself in this moment. We'll do just a short little thing about that. Then we got to gain allies. We got to get more people than just us, right? Number four, I think I have 8 of them. Make a plan for what you can change. That's why today, what you can change, you can make a phone call, right? We can all make a phone call. Number 5, we're going to assign jobs to allies, friends, and even strangers. We're going to ask strangers for help. Number 6, we're going to create a competitive, positive outcome vision, right? That's going to help us a lot. Number 7, we're going to take action toward that positive vision. Number 8, we're going to make positive, proactive, I can't talk all of a sudden, affirmations, I can say it. And we're going to practice those. Number 9, yep. Oh, here's some more things, but it was 8. More things that we can do that we kind of poo-poo. But let's go back to the beginning, because here's the thing. We have to identify the fear. And it's different for everybody. What's the thing that's kicking your can this morning? Are you, like me, concerned that your child's personal information is being taken? Are you, a lot of you, I know we had a discussion on Monday and somebody said, I'm afraid to leave my child with other people. My assumption is you're afraid your child will be hurt or, heaven forbid, molested. What is your current fear? And we talked about on Monday that sometimes when you say it out loud, especially when you tell it to another person that you trust, it's funny how much gas it takes out of it. It's a lot like going into a dark room, which is very scary, and then you turn on a light, and it's not as scary, right? So we have to identify what the fear is first. Then let's go on to the next slide, because I was taught that fear, F-E-A-R, stands for false evidence appearing real. And sometimes that is the case. The thing that we are afraid of, it's like a ball of rubber bands, right? And we see it as this whole thing, but if you start taking things off, it's really nothing. Do you know? That isn't always the case, but sometimes it is. And it's important to look at it through that lens and go, is this just what I'm afraid of, or do I have reason to believe? So what we're going to do is, once we identify what the fear is, we're going to put that fear on trial. You can go on to the next one, Chris. So what does that mean? If we put fear on trial, it means we're going to ask it questions. We're going to ask for basically what they say now is receipts. We're going to ask for witnesses. We're going to ask for evidence. So, sometimes what we're going to find is that it's all a nothing burger. But other times we'll go, there's enough here for me to warrant a search warrant, right? To dig deeper. Do I know today that Doge is going into those buildings and stealing our children's personal information? I don't. But if I look at the receipts, that's what they've done with every other place that they have fired people, which gives me reasonable doubt, right? And so when we have reasonable doubt, then we're going to create the next step and take a plan to figure out what we can control. But if we see that there is no doubt, or that there shouldn't be, or reasonably there shouldn't be, like for instance, when you're in a plane and you're taking off and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid, something's going to go wrong and we're going to crash, right? And logically, you can look at that and go, well, do planes ever crash? Yes, they do. How often? What are the odds? The odds are that I'm going to win the lottery before I'm in a plane crash. More people win the lottery than crash in a plane. And that kind of mitigates it, right? It doesn't say your fear is completely irrational. It's just that the likelihood of it happening, and how many times have I been on a plane before and felt this, and the plane didn't crash? Right? So that's all part of cognitive behavioral therapy, by the way. Talking yourself through it, understanding what's happening, where's my fear coming from it? Is it coming from a place where there is some concern, but what's the percentage? Sometimes it's coming from a place where it's like there's no concern at all and you have no receipts. It's just free-floating anxiety. A lot of times what you find out is that the thing you're afraid of isn't the thing you're really afraid of. That you're reacting to everything because you're really afraid of this over here. So I'm throwing my phone now. Put your fear on trial. Ask it questions. Ask yourself questions. Ask for the receipts. But if you see that there is reasonable doubt, then we have to move forward. And then it's when we get into taking action. So go ahead and go on to the next one, Chris. Before we do that, though, we have to lower the anxiety before we take any action. So what we do is we ground ourselves. It's literally called grounding. And so you take both feet, right? I'm going to do it right now here with you. Put both feet on the floor. If possible, be touching ground. If you can be outside, it's called grounding for a reason. But you can do it in a chair inside. Feet on the floor. Hands touching something or touching yourself, and really try to focus on what you can feel. Feel your butt in the chair and take a breath. And you ground yourself. They've proven that there's something about that. There's magnetism that comes up from the ground. And in different places, there's more of it, right? It's why people go to Sedona, because it's higher there. But ground yourself and breathe and just focus on the bottoms of your feet and what can you feel, and your hands and your breath. That's all you focus on for a minute. It helps if somebody's there talking with you, but you can absolutely do it yourself. And breathe, right? Then the next thing that you start to do is ask yourself questions. Is everything okay right now? So much of the time when we are having fear and you start to feel a panic rising, I'm somebody who has had panic attacks, right? What you're panicking about is not right now. And if you can get to yourself to the point where you can get grounded and say, is everything okay right now? The thing I'm afraid of, is it happening right now? Usually, it's not. And you know how you can tell the difference? Is that when something is happening that is that big right now, you're usually in motion. You're running towards the door. You know, when I think about, there was a woman who talked extensively about when she was in the towers as they were getting ready to fall. And somebody said to her, weren't you panicked? And she said, no, I was focused on surviving, right? In the moment when something real, when a real emergency is happening, a different mode kicks in and we panic afterwards or we panic before. But when something's happening, usually we're stone cold killers then, right? Whatever happens hormonally, we get focused on survival, usually is the thing. So ask yourself, is everything okay right now? Is my child okay right now? And then we take a deep breath on that, because usually that's the truth. Your child is okay right now. If they're not, you're going to kick it into gear and you're going to take action. Okay. But give yourself a moment and remind yourself, right now, I'm okay. I'm okay. If your fear has merit, though, if you've put it on trial and you are like, no, I'm not sure that my child is okay in this moment. And I'm not talking about, because if they are in this moment stealing your child's information, then we can't do anything about that right now, right? But is your child physically okay right now? And hang on to this moment, right? But if your fear has merit, that they're, for instance, stealing your child's information, the next question is, what do you have control over? What can you actually do? And this is humbling, right? Because sometimes we say, nothing, I can do nothing. But a lot of times we say, well, I don't have control over that, but I certainly can make a phone call. Or I certainly can ask for an emergency IEP meeting. Or I certainly can take my child out of school, right? I could homeschool my child. We usually have options. It feels like we don't sometimes, and so it's critical to get real honest with yourself. What do you have control over? Everything you don't have control over, you got to breathe on that. And if you're a praying person, pray. And people pray to different things. I often, when my son was young and it was so overwhelming for me and there were so many things I didn't have control over, I would say, I hope that brighter minds are working on this. And now I have a show where I interview those people. And I always say, God, you were what I was praying for, that brighter minds were working on this. There are amazing people in the world who are doing good work and who are doing things that I can't do and maybe you can't do. And sometimes we got to lean into that. But we got to do our part. What do you actually have control over? Anna says, fear person information will be used against him and he will have no future because they will use it against him. And based on some things that we have seen, Anna, I have to say that I don't think I think that fear has merit. But you are a person with a voice. You write very eloquently. You can write an email. You can make a phone call. And we can band together as a group of people, and we can work very hard to make sure that never happens, right? And we're going to take it one step at a time. But what you have control over today, make a phone call. Call your representatives. Tell them, you're not standing for that, right? Okay, on to the next one, Chris. So, number 3, we're doing it right now. We're gaining allies. I think it's important to be with like-minded people right now. That if you, one of the things I loved hearing from the parent who said, I'm with a group of parents that this is what we're worried about. I was so grateful that she has a group of people to share that with, it's not just one person, right? Because everybody needs to rest. And when one person is resting, another person is watching the news. There's so much. We're being bombarded. And it's very hard to keep your eye on the ball because there's so many balls, right? So when you gain allies, people that you trust and that you are like-minded with, and that you don't have to be like-minded about everything, by the way. I don't think we're all like-minded, right? I think we all have different ideas of things, but there are some things, and when it comes to the rights of people on the autism spectrum, I think we're all together, right? And we understand, I may not agree with you about this, but when it comes to this, we're all multi-purpose, and we have voting rights, and we have eyes, and we can see in different directions. The herd mentality, they are listening to the herd. When we complain and say this is not right, they are listening. They are listening right now. So it's important that we speak up. So gain allies, join a group, find a group of people, or start a group of people that you can talk with. Now, the one thing I will say to you is that there are some people who spin the fear wheel and they take a certain amount of comfort in that, and they'll dump it on somebody. Be careful that you're not with somebody who's doing that. And the way that you stop doing that is by saying, if they start going there, you go, okay, what action are we taking today? That is what action is, the thing that helps to mitigate the spinning the fear thing, because we're all capable of spinning the fear thing, right? So gain allies, and these can be everywhere. Identify who those people are, know how to get a hold of them, start a weekly group, a monthly group, whatever, or a chat so that you can talk to each other. I have friends from around the country who have identified by some of the things that I've said. They're like, oh, you agree with me on this? And I get texts all the time, and somebody says, I just saw this. It's so upsetting to me. What are we doing? Right? Love it. Okay, let's go on to the next one. So now we're going to make a plan for what we actually have control over and how can we change it. I have seen people do this to great effect. Now, whether that's planning a protest, so we have our things that we do today, like we make our phone calls today, but then I don't know what's next. But you can bet your boopy I'm going to be talking to my allies today saying, what are we doing? What are we doing? And some people are better at the planning than other people. I'm really good at showing up. You're like, okay, we need to have hats that match. I'm like, I'm getting the sewing machine out, right? But other people are really good at being the architects of the change and saying, here's what we need to do, here's how we need to do it, and I love following those people. If you're one of the movers and the shakers that can make the plan, hallelujah. Tell me, I'll tell other people, right? But that's part of why you have the allies. But we do need to make a plan. And there needs to be a personal plan of what can I do to make a change. So you got to ask yourself, what am I doing today? If it's not making the phone call, which is what I've recommended, the 5 phone calls, what are you going to do? And this isn't just about the thing that I brought up. You've got other things that you're afraid of. Is something going on at school that isn't right? What is your plan for today? What is the piece of action that you're going to take today, which might be teaching your child how to say no, right? It might be teaching your child how to recognize when somebody's being mean at them. What is your plan? Because you've got to change, whatever the fear is, you got to change something. Okay, going on to number 5. Now, we can't do it alone, right? So we've got our allies, and it's really important to assign jobs to allies, friends, and strangers. So I mentioned this on Monday, that they did this whole psychological thing about it was the whole Kitty Genovese story, the woman who got murdered in front of a whole bunch of people, and nobody did anything. And there was all this work done by psychologists to figure out how does this happen. It certainly didn't happen only to Kitty Genovese. But why? Why does this happen in society? And I shared on Monday that what they realized is that, people can be watching something, but they don't feel like it's their job to do something unless somebody says it's your job to do something. So that if something is happening to you or your child and you need help, what you need to do is not just yell help, because everybody goes, I don't think they were talking to me. It's some strange psychological thing, but they don't. But if somebody turns and points to you and says, I need you to help me, then suddenly they feel responsible. And they are more likely, not 100%, but they are more likely to help you than if you just yell help. Well, this is true of a lot of different things. I remember years ago, we went to see a fireworks show, and it was right outside the mall in Santa Clarita. And people, there's like a 6-lane thoroughfare that separates the mall from a whole little place where there's shops, and there's a Whole Foods, and there's an Islands restaurant right on the corner. And so people fill the parking lot of the mall, and then people who come a little bit later fill the whole area outside that shopping area. And that's where we were, outside the Islands restaurant. But cars were zipping along, and it was really scaring me. It was really, I was like, oh, the cars are very close. And Jem was just little, and both my husband and I were like, I don't know, we're sitting a little close to the cars, really, really worried. Well, there was a horrible tragedy that happened and they closed part of the thoroughfare. They got it down to like 2 lanes in the middle during the fireworks, and during the finale, because I think people were distracted, a car was coming out and a car was going by. They hit each other at high velocity, and one of the cars went airborne into the crowd, 20 feet from where we were standing. It was horrifying. And the car had landed on top of an entire family who was sitting on the ground looking up at fireworks, just like the most horrible thing in the world. And it was so singularly shocking, and looking back on it, how people reacted, right? I was there with my child, and I had a hold of my child, but I froze. Initially, in the first moments, as the car was airborne and coming toward us, I was frozen. And all I could think was, I was so worried about the cars, why didn't I listen to myself? And I could not get past that thought. I was frozen. Thank goodness my husband went right into action. He saw the danger coming, and he pulled Jem out of my arms and stepped back across the sidewalk. Now, as it happened, the car landed on people 20 feet from us. We weren't actually in imminent danger, but it was hard to tell in the moment. So he pulled Jem and went back, and then he pulled me. Love that was what his instinct was, to save our kid first, right? And then I was still frozen in the moment. I did not know what to do. I was holding my child. I was shaking. We could hear the screams. It was terrible, you guys. So many people were screaming. And my husband turned to me. He said, "Are you okay? I'm going to go see if I can help." And he ran into the crowd that was gathering around the car, trying to do something with the car. But a woman came up the sidewalk. It was chaos. It was absolute chaos. And the fireworks were still going off. It was just horrible. This woman came up, and she was holding one of the most expensive cameras I've ever seen in my life on a pole, because she was taking pictures of the fireworks. And she came up to me and she said, "Excuse me, I am a paramedic. Those people, whoever is in that, underneath that car, they need me right now. I see that you're a mom. You look like you're trustworthy. I need for you to hold my camera so that I can go help them. But I want to know that I'm going to come back and you're still going to be here and you're going to have my camera and my camera is going to be okay." I said, "Absolutely. I'm not a paramedic. I've got your camera. You go." She went to a stranger and said, "I'm going to trust you." And it's funny because we just talked the other day about how, when we're teaching our children who to trust, we say, pick a mom, right? A mom who's holding their child or has their child in a stroller, because they tend to be very responsible people, right? And this stranger came up to me and impressed upon me that I had a role to play, because she was going to go in and she was going to know what to do to help them. And listen, it was hard. I was holding a toddler and holding a camera on a pole that was expensive that I needed to not let fall, right? But I was going to do that because she was going to go help somebody else, and I'm not a paramedic. And I watched a group of men, my husband wasn't a part of them because there was that many people, pick up that car off of that family. Um, and I know that that paramedic was in and trying to save lives. What do we learn from this? First of all, we learn to follow our instincts, right? Ever since then, I say to myself, when I get a feeling, I try to listen to it, you know? But a whole bunch of people in a moment of an emergency rallied together to pick up that car. And this woman taught me a lesson that you can go to a stranger and you can assign them a job, but she was clear with me. You know what I mean? She was not mamby-pamby. She was not like, here's my card, find me a week from now. She was like, I am trusting you. I need to go in there, but I've picked you, and I'm going to come back here. And eventually my husband came back, and they were clearing people away, and they were saying, you know, please leave so that the ambulances can get in and, you know, pull back and whatever. And I said, I got to stand right here with this camera because I promised her. Do you know? So you can ask people to do things. One of the things that my fear way back when was what happens to my child if my husband and I die. We had almost gotten into a car accident at one point, and that's all. I was obsessed with that afterwards. What happens if we die? And I know people go, oh, there's wills and things, and I'm like, that just doesn't even begin to cover it, because who is actually taking care of my child? So for me, not necessarily for you, I went around and I identified people and I said, I'm assigning you, if I die, you're responsible for this part of my child's upbringing. And I kind of sectioned it because I thought it was too much for one or two people, right? So I sectioned it all off. Like one of the things that was important to my husband was that my husband and I was that our son had an opportunity to know and understand what good theater is. That's our background. That was important to me. I know people talk about how important it is that their child understand a church and what happens at a church. For us, it was theater, right? And I assigned two friends, and I said, you are his theater godparents. Anything happens to me, you're responsible for fetching him up in the world of theater. But we did that with like 20 different things. That we had somebody who was responsible for teaching him about finances, somebody who was responsible, that we had two lawyers that we were like, you're responsible for helping him if he has a legal issue. Another person who was a doctor and a nurse, and we said, you're responsible if he has questions about medical stuff, right? All the things that we would do for him, and we assigned it to friends. And as soon as I assigned it to friends, I felt better. My anxiety about his future, I thought, well, it's not perfect, but I even assigned one person to be the czar over everyone. We assigned people who were responsible to be his new guardians, but I said, you know, things change. And I've seen people assign guardians and then they become drug addicts, right? And you can't do anything to take the child away from them, you know, and who knew they were going to become drug addicts? So I assigned a czar, and I said, you are responsible for overseeing everything, and you get the actual guardianship, so that if the people who have custody of him turn out to not be who I think them to be, you have the ability to take him out, right? So I had checks and balances. You can do this. You don't have to do it all yourself. Assign things to people. Ask them for things. I remember at one point calling my mother and saying, I need help. She lived a long ways away. And I said, I need you to be looking for grants for me that I can apply for. You don't have to do it all yourself. Assign things to other people. There are some people you know far, far away who will look things up for you. I have been known to, when people call me and say, I don't know what to do about this, to do a Google search for an hour and say, here's what I found. Assign people to help you. And it can be allies, it can be friends, and sometimes it can be total strangers. Let's go on to number 6. Okay, now we've identified what our fear is. We've identified, is it something we really have to address? And if it is, how are we going to address it? And how are we going to get help addressing it, right? But this is the other side of the coin. We have to create a competitive, positive outcome. Because we're not going to be able to sleep or get through the day if we just focus on this might happen. I'm worried about this. Fear, 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 fear. We got to have a happy place that we can go to. So you got to picture your child in the most incredible circumstances. Like, if you could pick the best outcome for them, what would it look like? And you got to paint that picture. You got to get so clear on it that you know what it is. Again, they've done so much research on this that if you're like focused on one thing, for instance, race car drivers. They have to be aware of where the wall is, but if they start focusing on the wall, guess what they do? They drive right into the wall. You don't want to do that. So you got to create a picture in your head of what you really want. And then it's important to put something towards that. We're going to talk about that in a second. But even if it's just drawing a picture of it, something, you got to create it, and it's got to be really, really clear to you. Spend some time on this. Sit comfortably someplace. My husband and I used to do this on a regular basis. We used to sit on the floor of our condo apartment that we were struggling to pay our rent, and we would sit for 1 minute every night and hold hands and just try to dream of some incredible outcome. And can I tell you what we dreamed? It all came to pass. It all came to pass. We dreamt that we would be living in a house, which we do. It's rented. I don't care. That I would have a garden. I do. That my son would have had a pet, and he had pets. That he was going to graduate from college. I'm like 60 days away from that. That my husband would make his career as an actor, and he has for the last 10 years, solely as an actor, and that I would be happy that I had a book. And my book is done. It sits on a bookcase, right? But we dreamt all of that sitting on the floor when I was at the most anxious, you guys. Give yourself time. This is so important. I don't know who, because we sort of changed a little bit of the words, and it's attributed to a lot of different people, Buddha, all kinds of people, but the thought has been out there for years. What you think becomes what you do, becomes what you say, becomes who you are. Right? But we know that Louise Hay, I'm a big fan of Louise Hay, said, change your thoughts, change your life. So I don't want us to all be ostriches and live with our heads in the sand and not notice when BS is happening that involves our children, right? We have to be on it and paying attention. However, we have to have a full, wonderful life where we are picturing all the good in life as well. And so if all of your thoughts right now are on, they're screwing our kids over, you got to take a break from that, and you got to picture the exact different outcome. Change your thoughts, change your life, align yourself with those people, take action. We cannot be in the muck all the time. We can't. It does not help if we are. So change what you're thinking. Change what you're thinking. Okay, on to the next one. Then we got to take action. It's not enough to just think it. People go, I'm thinking happy thoughts, and I'm thinking that someday I'm going to have a garden and it's just going to show up. No, my friends. We got to take action towards that. What are we doing? My book just didn't materialize. I worked really hard on that book, right? You got to take action. If what your dream is for your child to be an astronaut, that's what somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago. Well, then you need to take them to NASA to tour, to see it. You got to take some action towards that, right? I loved in Christina Adams' book, A Real Boy, her son showed interest in airports. So she would take him to the airport and watch planes take off, right? That seems like a small thing, but that shaped who he was as a person. You gotta move it. Get unstuck, get unparalyzed, take action towards that positive vision. Whatever it was that you dreamt of, my husband wanted to be an actor. Well, that's great, but you got to audition. You can't sit at home and go, I hope someday I'm an actor. You got to go and audition, right? So take even one action today towards that positive vision. You'll see that it kind of rearranges the molecules in your body and becomes a different thing. Okay, let's go on to number 8. And then we are going to practice positive affirmations. And I know people go, oh, this is so poo-poo shishi. But again, if what you think becomes what you say, becomes what you do, what are you saying to yourself? And sometimes the things that we're saying to ourselves are not useful. By the way, you're modeling this for your kids. A lot of times I will hear our kids on the spectrum, once they have the ability to voice what they're thinking and feeling, I've watched them in stressful situations. My son used to do robotics, and you want to talk about, that's where a lot of our high-functioning kids with autism are, in the robotics club, right? And sometimes they would speak aloud, their inner monologue, and the difference between the kiddo who's standing there going, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, over and over and over, and what that outcome gets to the other kiddo who's standing next to him going, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, breathe, remember to breathe, I can do this. And the difference of who gets it done first, always the kid who's talking to themselves saying, I can do this, I got this, remember to breathe, wildly different. My son makes fun of me because I talk out loud when I'm stressed, and I'm like, okay, I got it, I can do it, but it helps. I used to waitress, and there was a guy that I waitressed with, and his name was Robbie, but he would trill his R, and whenever things were behind in the restaurant, he would say, go, Robbie, you got this, Robbie, you can do it, right? And so I say that all the time now, because it was so great, and Robbie would have it, and he would do it, and he would get to more tables, and his patrons loved him, right? And so I say that, I literally say, go, Robbie, go, when I need to get moving and do something. How you talk to yourself sets a standard. And if you're talking to yourself saying, oh, I'm such a loser, we got to change that right now. And you got to change it in front of your kiddo, right? You're modeling that behavior. What would be the nicest thing that you could say to yourself? Let's start saying those things. There are people who say, pick your positive affirmations and write them 25 times a day, or say them while you're walking, at least 25 times a day, and you're supposed to graduate to saying it to yourself in the mirror, and then you say it to yourself naked in the mirror, which is that much harder, right? I don't care how you do it. I don't know from rules, but start giving yourself positive affirmations. Things like saying, I'm okay. My child is okay. I got this. I'm my child's best advocate. I can do this. My child can do this. Put that out into the universe and watch what changes. It's not just about saying the affirmations. You still have to be taking the action. But I got to say, it's easier to take the action when you feel like, okay, I can do this. And sometimes the thing that you're saying is, I can do this just a little bit every day. That's okay too. It's so much better than saying, you loser, you don't ever finish anything. Would you allow somebody to talk to you that way? Or would you allow somebody to talk to your child that way? You wouldn't. But sometimes we talk negatively to ourselves. Let's switch it and watch that anxiety ratchet down. Number 9. No, we had 8. Okay, so there are other things that actually do help, but a lot of times people go, oh, that's just, I'm actually upset and I'm feeling all this anxiety and this is not helpful to me. But it does help when you talk to a friend. When you tell one other person, it lightens the load. And sometimes it's critical to talk with a professional. And I mentioned this the other day. They have all these online things now. It's easier than ever to talk with a professional, and sometimes having it be a stranger, a place where you can dump all the things. You don't have to worry what their reaction to it is. It's there, and hopefully you have access to it. And if you do, and if you need it, please take advantage of that. It sounds stupid, but drinking water changes your state. It literally does. If you are stuck in a cyclical thinking that's saying my child is not safe, right? It's hard to jump out of that. And sometimes changing your physical state can really help. So drinking a glass of water changes your physical state. Going for a walk changes your physical state. Put on some music and dance it out. It sounds ridiculous, but it literally can change the process of your brain, what it's doing, right? Brushing your teeth, same thing. It's all changing your behavior. What else? I have to say that if there's something that's really dogging you, that you're stuck in a cyclical thing where you're getting images. I know a lot of us went through this when we went through postpartum, where images would come up that were not good images, right? I certainly went through that, and I heard other women describe this. One of the most effective things that I've ever done, well, first of all, there's tapping, EFT tapping. That's really helpful. There are places that you can do that online for free, and then there are subscription places that you can do that, and you can also do that with a professional. If you look on your card, there should be a thing on your insurance card that says where to call for mental health, or the website to visit. And people always say, I don't know how to find the EFT tapping professionals. It's super easy now, because if you go on the website for your provider and they have a list of who are the people who are in network, and they'll say what their specialties are. That if you're, having problems because, whatever, whether it's substance abuse, or you had a parent who was an alcoholic, you have eating issues, whatever your issue is, including EFT, emotional freedom tapping, it will say what that person is good at and what they're certified in. And more people are getting certified, because although it sounds, again, airy fairy poo poo shishi, they've done the research on it, and it's one of the most effective things to help with trauma. So it is a sign of trauma if, when you're sitting and relaxing and you're getting images of all the horrible things that can go wrong, that's a sign of trauma. And EFT can be very helpful very quickly. You don't have to wait 6 months to feel better. Usually within 2 sessions, people start to feel better. So that can really, because it literally rewires your brain in a very no medicine way to do it. So that can be really helpful. But also, I don't know what it's called, but there is a type of, and there are places on the internet that can walk you through this. But if you're having an image, like, let's say you got embarrassed by something, and then you know how after you do something and you go, oh, that was so stupid, and then it plays over and over and over again in your head. Well, there is a technique where you sit and you bring up the memory, like it's a video in your head, and in your head you pull out a marker and you start marking over things. And you can put thought bubbles, and you could do things, and you literally, it's like scratching the memory and rewiring it. Like remaking it so that it's funny, or that it's ridiculous if somebody was mean to you, drawing horrible marks all over their face and big teeth and putting a funny mustache on them so that it takes the bite out of it. By the way, you can do that with your kiddos too. And if visualization is not your thing, you draw it. You draw it in front of you, you draw a picture of what happened, and then you literally take the marker and you write no over it. Can be very helpful at getting you out of that cyclical, compulsive, stuck in a moment kind of thing. Because we don't want to be stuck in the fear. We don't want to be stuck in the anxiety. You have things to do today. Brilliant things that could potentially change the world. And more than anything, you're showing up for yourself and for your kiddo or your kiddos. And it will not help them if you are stuck in the anxiety of what the future will hold. Maybe the future is a brilliant place that we're going to get to. Yeah, we got some stuff we have to get through first, right? And we need to stand up for each other first before we get to that future. But that doesn't mean that that future is not there. One of the things that I've been reminding myself on a regular basis lately is that there have been many times in history when things have gone a direction that everybody said, oh, that's not how we wanted them to go. And yet we're still here. People got through it. When I think about the Holocaust and how horrible, and it did happen. If somebody is out there telling you it didn't happen, listen, I know people. It happened. And how unthinkable that in our world that could have happened, right? And yet we survived. So many people survived. I don't want that kind of thing happening again, but we can get through this together. But we do not be silent. We have to stick up for each other. Today, I'm call to action. You need to call your representatives today. If you are not okay with those Department of Education buildings being closed and locked for 2 days with God knows what happening in them, you've got to call. And if you are okay with a person heading the Department of Education making a cut of 50% of the people when she does not know what IDEA stands for, you need to call somebody today. And call all your friends and tell them to call too. And if you are okay with her on day 5 saying, I'm going to find the quote again, saying, well, do you know what? I'm not sure I can tell you exactly what it stands for, except it's the programs for disabled and needs. She does not say people in that sentence, you guys. What does that tell you where her head is? It is not with us. It is not with our children. That is not okay. Not okay. Please call. Please stand up for yourself and your kiddo. Now is the moment. And if we don't all, I don't know what will happen. We'll get through it one way or the other, but let's stand up to it now before it gets any worse. All right. Reducing the anxiety, then go make a dream for a better time and a better place. All right. My love to everybody. We are back next week. We have so much stuff that we are filming for you for April. I'm hoping that we're going to get the calendar out by the end of next week so that you guys can make a plan for watching all the amazing things we're going to be talking about with all the amazing people. But we'll be back on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug for me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.